Good morning to all of you. My name is Julie Hill, and I am a member of the pastoral care team here at Mount St. Francis. We welcome all of you gathered here in Clare House Chapel, those watching on the in-house system, as well as Sister Alice's family and friends who are joining us via live stream. As we gather to honor and remember Sister Alice Schaefer, we will begin with our opening hymn, number 470, verses 1 and 3. Number 470, verses 1 and 3. In our opening hymn, we heard words of praise to God for the glory of creation. Today, we give praise for the creation and life of Sister Alice Schaefer. Creation certainly sang on the day of her birth, and our faith assures us there was heavenly rejoicing on the day of her death. Sister Alice was particularly close to the earth and all of creation while growing up on the family farm in Meyer, Iowa. And after 8th grade, she even told her parents she wanted to get married and be a farmer's wife. God's plans for her religious vocation eventually played out, which led her to serve in various educational roles throughout her active years of ministry. Rather than spending years in the fields of a farm, Sister Alice used her teaching and administrative skills for 43 years within the classrooms of various schools throughout Iowa. Instead of planting seeds in the ground, she grew seeds of knowledge and faith in the minds and hearts of her beloved students. Alice continued to praise God's creation during her retirement, especially when it came time to move into her room at Clare House. She was overjoyed at her garden view and would often be sure that visitors also took note of the beauty right outside her window. Sister Alice loved to just sit and marvel each day at God's glory. Spending some quiet time in the garden and watching the seasons unfold was often a regular part of her day. In addition to praising our Creator God, offering prayers of thanksgiving was also part of Sister Alice's routine, and no doubt the Clare House Chapel was her favorite place for time in prayer. Sister Alice expressed abundant gratitude for her living accommodations, gratitude for the staff at Clare House, and most of all, gratitude for her community life with her fellow Franciscan sisters. Sister Alice, your beauty and wisdom touched so many, and we lift our hearts to the divine Creator in gratefulness for the life you lived while here on earth. May your garden view now be more glorious than you ever imagined.
A reading from the Gospel according to John. Do not let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. My Father's house has many rooms. If that were not so, would I have told you that I am going there to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, so that you also may be where I am. You know the way to the place where I am going. The Gospel of the Lord.
Now is our time to share memories of Sister Alice. Please raise your hand and we will bring a microphone to you. Please state your name and stand if you are comfortable.
My name is Sister Rita Green, and I have a message from Sister Alice's niece, Mary Lou Schaefer Byrne, who is a daughter of her oldest brother, Amos. I remember when Sister Alice, we knew her as Sister Sebastian back then, would come home for a visit. It was always a very big deal because we only saw her every few years at first. Sister was always a lot of fun, and I remember her joining in a family softball game. She wore her long habit at the time, but that did not slow her down much. We all got a big laugh when she tried to catch a ball that bounced to her in the outfield, and her habit got in the way. She struggled at first, but managed to get the ball picked up and fling it to the pitcher. I am sure we all wanted her on our team. Sister had 9 nieces and 11 nephews, but she always kept track of what grade we were in and would talk to us about what we were doing at that time. Being the oldest of her nieces and nephews, I had the privilege of taking a bus with Grandma, her mother, to her graduation from Loras College. That was a very special occasion, and we had a fine meal afterwards. Sister Alice was always such a great influence in my life, and I really regret that I did not get to see her more often. I do treasure the letters I got from her, though, and will always have great memories.
Sister Janet Haverkamp, and I have a message from her niece Audrey Schaefer Christensen. Many titles could describe Sister Alice, such as aunt, sister, daughter, mentor, giver, teacher, friend, and faithful servant. All are so important, and my favorite memory is that of teacher. I have been teaching for 39 years, and Sister and I shared many conversations about school, kids, and how a particular year was going. She would come visit me in my classroom many times when she returned home for a visit. This is a great memory for me, and I usually had to take a seat as she would take over the classroom and ask kids questions and inquire about their learning and give a bit of her wisdom as well. How fun it was to see her smile at my classroom door. Thank you, Sister, for all your teaching that impacted the lives of so many.
I'm Sister Margaret Wick, and I have a message from Sister Rita Gadkin, who could not, she had this already, and she was not able to be here today. And Alice was Rita's principal in Cascade. And this is during her time as principal at Aquin Elementary in Cascade, Sister Alice initiated the annual walk-a-thon as a way for kids to raise funds for charitable organizations. It was the students in grades 4, 5, and 6 who participated in this 10-mile walk. Their parents and others sponsored them. That walk-a-thon has continued every year since, except during COVID. What Alice was especially proud of was that 100% of the money raised always went to charity. The school didn't keep back any part of it for themselves. During retirement, Alice sometimes went to Cascade on the day of the walk-a-thon to bless the walk at the beginning of the day and welcome the walkers back when they returned.
I'm Sister Margie Filner, and Sister Alice was my principal at Cascade. And I want to build on her love of creation. One day, we were in some kind of a turmoil, and we said, get Sister Alice, get the principal. And we couldn't find her anywhere. And so we, wrestled around and finally solved the problem and went on. And later that afternoon, Sister Alice appeared. We said, where were you? And she said, it was such a beautiful day. I got in the car and drove out to the country so I could see the springtime emerging. Sister Alice, we love you.
I'm Sister Charlotte, and my memory of Sister Alice comes from not too long ago. I was having supper with her and one of the Vietnamese sisters and a few others, and it was mentioned that it was the birthday of the Vietnamese sister, and somebody said, oh, we should sing. So we started singing at our table, and Alice joined in clear, full voice. And pretty soon the tables near us were looking like, what is going on? And the most interesting part was that after we had completed the typical happy birthday, Alice continued in a loud, clear voice another happy birthday verse that none of us knew. And we provided a little enjoyment for the dining room that night. And Alice always provided enjoyment for us.
I'm Sister Jane McGrain, and in the 90s, there's Church's Center for Land and People, and Alice was greatly involved in this program. This program was over at Cincinnati Mound.
Sister Millie Leuenberger. I met Sister Alice back in 1961. It was my second year on mission. I'd been transferred after 1 year of teaching, and it was a very difficult situation. But Sister Alice took me under her wing, became my mentor, filled me up with confidence, with joy, and so much more that we stayed friends for years. But then, many years later, I'm up at Stacyville, up in her home territory. And one of the first times that she was there, she was celebrating her Jubilee in Johnsburg, which is just in Minnesota across the border, and she said, "Millie, I would like you there to celebrate my Jubilee with me and to represent the whole Christian community, our Franciscans." From then on, whenever Sister Alice was on her home visit, she always came to Stacyville to spend an hour or more with me, and our friendship continued. The last memory was Wednesday when she was in hospice. I came over to visit her. She was quiet at first, and then she started talking a mile a minute. Some of you call and you heard that. And so eventually I placed my hand on hers, and she continued talking, and she would constantly pulse my hand, squeeze it, constantly, that whole time. And the only words I could grasp that she was saying was parents and responsibilities. I'm sure she was thinking about school. And after she did that for maybe 20 minutes or more, whatever it was, all of a sudden she let go of my hand. She raised it toward me, and she said the word face. And with that, I leaned toward her, and she gently stroked my face and put her hand back down into mine, and we spent some more time, her talking together, until she finally fell asleep. Thanks, Alice, for all your love for these 63 years that I have known you.
My name is Sister Elvira. I went out on mission in 1953 to Grandville, and Alice was there. Now, what I'm going to share is two silly little things that I especially remember. The school, grade school and high school was one building, and it was, 50 feet away from the convent, but we would come home at noon. And so my memory of her coming was just like I used to call her a little Napoleon, She was in charge, and she just trotted across that play yard. So that's one thing. And the other thing is, occasionally, we did have a homemaker, but occasionally we had to chip in by cooking. And we could be sure if Alice signed up, it'd be stewed tomatoes. Crazy, but that's what little things you remember.
Sister Kathleen Grace, an Advent journey. She was waiting, daily sitting, hoping, praying, to see, to be with the one she loved. We rejoice she's there.
Sister Alice was my principal my very first year on mission in 1962 or 1. I had never had any information or education for teaching. And so the first day came, I had 40-some 8th grade students. And I sat there and gave them study periods the whole time. I have no idea what they studied. I learned their names, and I had seated them alphabetically. So when they left that first day, I could call each one by name as they went out of the room. Then came day 2, and we're in church for Mass, and I decided I'm not going back in that room. These students are expecting to get a fair education, and I don't know what I'm doing. So I went up to Alice and pulled her out of church and told her, I'm not going back in that classroom, and I did not. I left church, and I don't know where I was going to run to, probably Mount St. Francis. But she got me up against the doors of Sacred Heart between her arms so that I could not run, and decided what to do with me, which took a lot of planning. And it ended up anyway, however she planned, I became a pretty good teacher for the rest of my life. And I thank her for planting the seeds.
I'm Sister Mary Lechtenberg, and Alice was my principal for 5 years in Cascade. She came at a really difficult time because the previous principal had, left the community. And there was a big uproar in town about that. And so, and it affected all of us. I mean, we were all, kind of emotionally upset. But she came in and steered the ship, and you've heard what a great job she did. Following what Margie said about her taking time off to enjoy nature, my last 2 years there, I was at St. Pat's Garryon. We took the 5th and 6th grade out of town, and so for 2 years I was there. Well, Alice was supposed to visit regularly. Well, she was supposed to come, we expected her to arrive around 10 o'clock. Well, she'd show up around 2. And, now that I think about it, I bet she was just driving on the country roads and enjoying nature. And she came like maybe every 3 weeks. So we had a lot of, leadership ability to keep those 4 classrooms going. Thank you.
I'm Sister Mary Lou Reich. I also experienced the leadership of Sister Alice when I went to teach at Cascade, and she was the principal. She was a very fair woman and had a lot of practical common sense, and that really helped in the situation. She was a hard worker also. I remember, I don't know how many summers she did this, but she went down to the dwelling place in Mississippi and worked with Claire Van Lent at that retreat center, and she was doing all kinds of, the physical manual work there. She loved working in the kitchen at Mount St. Francis at the turbo dishwasher with the pots and the pans, and working with the young people that were hired there. These last years, when Sister was at Clare House and we would come over for liturgy, I was always very touched by her reverence and her prayerfulness. There were many times when I'd come over to visit her and she wasn't in her room, she was in chapel. And she did that often when she was able, especially to get here by her own power. And even these last weeks, she would be sitting in her chair after Mass, and the caregiver would come to take her to the meal. And she would sometimes say, no, this is where I'm supposed to be. I need to be here. And I always admired her gratitude. There was never a time that somebody did something for her that she didn't say, thank you.
I'm happy that you mentioned that experience at the dwelling place. Claire Van Lent wrote a book about their experience there. And it was always on Alice's desk. So we would talk about that sometimes. A miracle. I opened the book to a place where her name was and a story about her. So I was just happy that I was able to read that to her. I said, Alice, here's your name. Your name is right here. So
I'm Virginia Jennings. We all know that Alice was somewhat of a unique character, and she remained unique all her life. She really was true to herself. Anyway, the story that I want to share happened one Christmas when Marie and I and Alice lived together at Worthington. Alice taught at Worthington and Marie and I went up to Dyersville. Anyway, we were getting ready for our Christmas celebration, and somehow, I don't know if we drew names or whatever, but among the three of us, we were prepared to exchange a Christmas present. And I love Christmas presents. And so I was so excited to receive this little box from Alice, wondering what was inside of it. Well, when I opened it, I was more than non-excited. It said, I owe you. It wasn't until spring that the IOU was paid. So, Alice, thank you for your delayed gift. It was appreciated.
I'm Sister Marie Seagrand, and when I lived at Worthington, and this was after Virginia moved out, Alice and I experienced a tornado together. It hit Worthington and caused a lot of damage, not much to our house, but I can remember how we, both of us decided, let's go down to the basement and get under the table. So there was Alice and I under the table together, but she was quite a trooper to, that we survived that together. So I always remember her for being there with me.
Thank you for sharing your special stories and remembrances of Sister Alice's life. We will continue to share our memories of her during the days and weeks to come. And so we end in prayer. God of bountiful life and glorious creation, you fashioned each of us in your likeness and image. We celebrate the beauty and spirit of Sister Alice as she lived the gospel and proclaimed the goodness of God. We praise you for the gift of her life and rely on the assurance that we will all one day dwell with you forever in the glorious garden of eternal glory. In Jesus' name we pray. We will conclude with our closing hymn, number 470, verses 5 and 6. Number 470, 5 and 6.